Welcome to the Harpreet Singh Show. I'm your host Harpreet Singh from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. Today I'll be taking you over to London and Birmingham where my two guests will be Minreet Kaur and Narinder Kaur. She's the co-founder of Sikh Women Action Network. All over the world we are hearing that there is a shadow pandemic which is continuing. We have heard reports from the United Nations that over 243 million cases of domestic violence have been reported. And all the communities are facing this crisis, but especially the Sikh community in England is pointing out to this fact that this is a major issue and it needs to be addressed. Sikh Women's Action Network reported that the cases which they are hearing have doubled during the pandemic. So why is it that this domestic abuse crisis is increasing? What all is being done and what all we can do to put a stop to this menace? Let's talk with our guests Minreet Kaur and Narinder Kaur. Minreet and Narinder, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, Narinder, I would like to start with you. If you could tell us about this organization, Sikh Women's Action Network. When was this established and what is the purpose for which it was set up?
So Sikh Women's Action Network was set up in 2014, and the reason that we set up at the time, there was lots of issues around child sexual exploitation and grooming and domestic abuse. We were also aware that when victims of abuse are seeking assistance, and predominantly a lot of the victims, 90% of victims that report abuse are women. And it's a well-known fact that when women are going through a difficult time, they prefer to go to another woman. And in our community, a lot of the community organisations were male-led organisations. So we wanted to, so there was a twofold purpose for setting Sikh Women's Action Network up. The first one was to support victims of abuse, whether that's child sexual exploitation, grooming, or domestic abuse. And the second purpose was to raise awareness and educate the community. So quite often in our community, people stay in an abusive relationship, or they don't seek support for anyone who might be exploited, sexual children or grooming victims. So we wanted to make them aware of the impact on a victim when they've been abused in any form.
Right. And since the time it has been established, every year the cases are increasing, but this pandemic has proved to be an absolutely different ballgame where the cases have more than doubled. I'll talk in details about that, but before that, Minreet, as a reporter, you have been covering social issues, and especially when it comes to domestic abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse. What do you have to say? Why in the Sikh community? Because we are known as a very, and otherwise we are known in the communities that we are very helpful, we help each other, we are known for our charitable organizations. But this aspect many times is just brushed aside. What is your observation?
I think my observation is that, having been married myself and, I didn't go through domestic violence, but, I went through a very difficult time when I was married. I know friends of mine that have actually been married in the Sikh community and have suffered from domestic violence. So I personally think, and this isn't everyone in the Sikh community, but I do think there is an issue still, where men, and I know it can happen the other way as well, but I just feel like where men, if they've had a bit to drink or if they've been, they've seen their parents or their fathers do that to their mothers, I just think that there's this thing of where they feel they can get away with it and no one's going to say anything and it's accepted. And I think that that's something we need to move away from, is that being able to educate people is that, you don't do that in a marriage. You don't do that to anybody, married or not married. You don't do that to someone. So I think it's just in our community. I think sometimes we just brush things under the carpet and we think, oh, it's okay to be like that and it's normal. And I think sometimes women feel, and I'm sure Narinder will probably agree with this, some women kind of accept it and think, oh, it's okay. I'll just go back to that marriage. And they kind of need to understand it's not okay. There is an organisation like here, Narinder's doing the work that she is to help support women, that it's actually not okay, because if one says it's okay, others are going to think it's okay. So I think, we need to stop brushing things under the carpet and we need to start talking about these things and dealing with them and tackling them as other communities do as well, instead of thinking it doesn't happen. It happens everywhere.
Absolutely. So Narinder, what do you feel? Why is it that we are still not ready to talk about these issues? Or are we coming out of that cocoon and have we started interacting with each other that this is a major issue and needs to be addressed?
I think there's still a lot of work to do. A lot of people do still want to ignore the fact that it happens. we've uncovered many issues, additional issues as to the factors within the domestic abuse situation. So we've uncovered that there's many perpetrators who are also females, which is quite sad. So historically, in Sikhi, we've been told that both men and women are supposed to be equal. And they're supposed to be respected. But even if you look at our gurdwara, so quite often you don't have women on the committees. If women are in any sort of like position, they're sort of like dealing with managing the kitchens or something like that. So women are seen, it's quite ingrained in our community still. So even though our religion tells us that men and women are equal, it's quite ingrained in our community that women are the lesser gender and they are treated as such. And domestic abuse is all about power, having power over another individual. So we see lots of cases where you've got mother-in-laws, sister-in-laws that are part of the problem, where they also perpetrate the abuse on their sister-in-laws, so they're babinga. So, and we've had lots of issues such as modern day slavery, financial abuse, which exists within the situation. You'll have people in our community is also a community which is quite often quite well to do. So you have people who are educated, they're professionals, and we see time and time again in the situations that we have, especially from the Sikh community. So we support more than just Sikh victims. We support victims from any background. So we go by the Sikh ethos of equality. But we see things like debts being incurred in the victim's name. And this is another form of control, or stopping them from going out to work, so they're not financially independent. They're dependent on the abusers. So there are lots of factors within the situations that we support.
Right. And Minreet, it's still considered to be a social stigma. We are still, it's a taboo to talk about these issues, and especially when a girl takes a stand for herself. Still, the onus is on the girl itself that irrespective of whatever has happened to her, probably she is wrong. So over the years, what is your observation? Is it changing, or still that same mentality exists right now also? And what about amongst the youngsters?
I think definitely it's changing amongst the youngsters for sure. I think that change is definitely happening more in that generation. In my generation, so I'm 40 now, and I think in my generation there still are. I mean, if I just take my example of trying to meet somebody in the community, I've gone through a divorce, I'm 40, I've been looking for the last 10 years, and the kind of men that I meet and some of the conversations that you have with them, I mean, they're not even, it's just ridiculous. So I think my generation, there are lots of people who are in my age group that I just think they think it's acceptable just to talk to women however they feel like talking to them. They don't think that you are equal. Your voice doesn't count. You don't really know what you're talking about that they know. And I meet a lot of men like that. And I'm not saying they're all like that, but definitely in my generation, I think that change is coming. But I mean, yeah, it's very slow in my age group. I think definitely in the youngsters, and it is changing. I mean, you've got organizations now, that like the work that Narinder is doing and other people are doing, where they're trying to obviously help support, and people are being more vocal. So I think that it's definitely changes coming slowly but surely, but we'll get there.
Okay, Minreet and Narinder, it's time for a short break. We'll go for a break. We'll be shortly back and continue with the discussion as to what are the reasons that, especially during this pandemic, and the cases are doubling or even quadrupling also. So what kind of cases are coming over to Swan, and how you are helping them out, and how is the community taking up these issues? So we'll talk all about this after this short break.
ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਰੀ ਡੈਲਟਾ ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਵਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ? ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਤਜਰਬੇਕਾਰ ਬਿਲਡਰ, ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਰ ਦੀ, ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗਾਈਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਉਸਾਰ ਸਕਣ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਜਾਂ ਸੰਦੀਪ 6048259295 ਉੱਤੇ।
है जुल्म ढाने का अंदाज भी कितना हंसी, हमारी जान पर बनाई है जब जब उसने अंगड़ाई ली। कभी खामोश रहते हैं, कभी शोर होता है। मोहब्बत में शरारत का मजा कुछ और होता है। दिल को जज्बात का तोहफा, खामोशियों को बात का तोहफा, खूबसूरती में जड़ी नजाकत अदाओं की चांद से मुखड़े को चांद सा तोहफा।
भारत ज्वेलर्स, सच्चे प्यार की चमक जैसा। पायल बिजनेस सेंटर सरी।
छोटे घरां तो लैके ਵੱਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟਸ ਤੱਕ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਮਸ਼ਹੂਰ ਹਨ ਜੇਰੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਵਾਲੇ। ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨਲ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਜਾਰਜੀਅਨ ਮਾਡਰਨ ਲੁੱਕ ਦੇਣੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਜੇਰੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਨੂੰ, ਜੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਾਬਲ ਸਟਾਫ ਨੂੰ ਭੇਜ ਕੇ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਐਸਟੀਮੇਟ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਸਟੋਨ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਅਰਬਨ ਸਟੋਨ, ਮੋਲਡਿੰਗਸ, ਐਕਸੈਸਰੀਜ਼, ਪਿਲਰਸ ਆਦਿ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਸਟਾਲ ਕਰਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਮਹਾਰਤ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹਨ। 25 ਸਾਲ ਦੀ ਵਾਰੰਟੀ, ਮੇਨਟੇਨੈਂਸ ਫ੍ਰੀ, ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਅਪਰੂਵਡ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਕਰਕੇ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਵੇਖੋ। ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 6046149231 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ यूनिट नंबर 500, 1515 ब्रॉडवे स्ट्रीट, पोर्ट कुकटलम। स्वागत करते हैं जी एक बार फिर आप सब ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ। ਦਿਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇਜ਼ ਬ੍ਰੌਟ ਟੂ ਯੂ ਵਿਦ ਦ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਆਫ ਬੈਸਟ ਹੋਮ ਕਿਚਨ ਕੈਬਨਿਟਸ। ਘਰ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਚਨ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਨਾ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਸਟ ਹੋਮ ਕਿਚਨ ਕੈਬਨਿਟਸ ਲੋਅਰ ਮੇਨਲੈਂਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਜਾਣੀ ਪਛਾਣੀ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਹਨ। ਕਸਟਮ ਹਾਈ ਐਂਡ ਘਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਮਲਟੀ ਯੂਨਿਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟਸ ਇਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਹਰ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਕੈਬਨਿਟ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਬੈਸਟ ਹੋਮ ਕਿਚਨ ਕੈਬਨਿਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ। ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਸੁਰਜੀਤ ਤੇਸੀ 6045918171 604 591 8171। ਸਾਡੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗੀ ਹਨ ਅਗਨੀਹੋਤਰੀ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕੰਸਲਟਿੰਗ। ਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਸਟੇਟਸ PR, ਨਵੇਂ ਹੋ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਹੋ, ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ, ਹਾਇਰ ਕਰਨੇ ਫੋਰਨ ਵਰਕਰਸ, ਐਕਸਪ੍ਰੈਸ ਐਂਟਰੀ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰਨੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਜਾਂ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ ਨੀਰਾ ਅਗਨੀਹੋਤਰੀ ਨਾਲ। 2006 ਤੋਂ ਸਰਟੀਫਾਈਡ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕੰਸਲਟੈਂਟ ਵਜੋਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਓਨੈਸਟ ਤੇ ਰਿਲਾਇਬਲ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਫॉर मोर ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਾਲ 6045972284 604 597 2284। ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਨੇ ਮਨਰੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਅਤੇ ਨਰਿੰਦਰ ਕੌਰ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਡੋਮੈਸਟਿਕ ਅਬਿਊਜ਼ ਦਾ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਵੱਧਦਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਬਿਫੋਰ ਦ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ, ਲਾਈਕ ਵੀ ਵਰ ਟਾਕਿੰਗ ਨਰਿੰਦਰ, what I read was that there has been an increase of over 244% in the kind of reports that have come to Swan. So what are the reasons behind this? Have you gone into this, talked to those people, the survivors, and what are they saying? What is happening?
Well, obviously during COVID, we were in the lockdown, so perpetrators and victims were in enclosed spaces for 24 hours, and they weren't able to go out and have a break from each other. And all we can imagine is that when two people are together night and day, and one person already has issues such as anger issues, wants to control the other person, the smallest thing could possibly agitate them when they are perpetrators of abuse. So what's probably happened, and again, it's just about just trying to think about what the possible situation could be, is that they have decided that, you know, I can take it no longer. We also do have a regular show in on the Sikh channel where we talk about domestic abuse, talk about the help that's available. So that's given people the confidence to come out and seek support, leave their abusive situation, and reach out for help. So I can anticipate that that's possibly the reason that they're reaching out.
Mm-hmm. So one question that arises, Minreet, is that like Narinder said, men and women are equal. Bani also says, "So kyu manda ki jit jame rajan," and this is a quotation which we read everywhere. But why this hypocrisy? Why is it that the Sikh gurdwaras, which play a very important role in our lives, are not coming forward and talking about these issues? Why do you feel you go around talking to all the people involved with the Sikh management as well as otherwise? Where is that where is that crux? What you find, that why are they not coming forward on this particular issue?
I think they're not coming forward because I think they're too busy really trying to focus on themselves and the Gurdwara itself. I feel like they think that there's organisations out there doing the work and that they don't really need to be involved. I agree that the Gurdwara should be the first point of call for us to be able to actually feel safe and to be able to go there and seek support. But I think the issue we've got with our Gurdwara, if you think about it, in the UK, we've probably got over 300, I think, Gurdwara, and all of them are run by men. We don't see a single female pardhan in the Gurdwara at all. And I think the one that we saw, which was in Leeds, I think, wasn't there for very long because she felt that she wasn't really, made to feel that comfortable, But I think that's the biggest problem, that women don't really get to come forward as much. And the Gurdwara is too focused on running the Gurdwara and Langar. And I think that is it. Langar is so important. We know that is, right? And it's brilliant that they're doing that. But if you think about it, there's so much more that they could do, because Langar is a part of that, but there's so much else going on in the community. And I just feel people don't really take that initiative to take that role on and say, well, let's start doing some more to help support. And I think the biggest problem in our community, and I can say this myself, just as being a journalist, that I find it very hard to get any support in the community, even in my work. And I do still feel that men are very much, very dominating, don't really give that support. And I feel, if I'm trying to do something good and I'm trying to raise awareness, like just on this story, Narinder she'll understand this. I mean, Narinder, how long did it take for us to, I know I pushed the story forward, but how long does the whole process take? It's not easy, and it's difficult, and it's harder if you're working with somebody who doesn't actually come forward and try to help you. Okay, Narinder did, because she's a woman. Women help one another. Right. But the stories that I have to cover sometimes with men, they just don't want to help. There's a massive problem in our community where I think people, just not everyone, but there are people there who just don't want to help, and they don't want to take the initiative of starting something great and helping people just to, through domestic violence or through anything. They just don't want to take that stand. I don't know what the problem is. I really don't understand, because it goes totally against our Gurbani, which is all about love, compassion, helping one another.
And Gurdwaras can play a very important role. Please carry on, Narinder.
Yeah. Sorry, Harpreet. Can I just come in on something? So we're talking about the Gurdwara, and my personal view on that is that Gurdwara also have a duty of care. Unfortunately, other cases that have come to Swan have been where there's been abuse within the Gurdwara. So we've had many cases of sexual abuse perpetrated by people within the Gurdwara. And I think that a Gurdwara is a public place. It's a community venue.
Yeah.
So it can be utilized in so many different ways where we can educate the community. But also the Gurdwara, because it is a public place, has a duty of care. So the Gurdwara should have its own safeguarding policy. The Gurdwara should understand if someone has come to them for support because something has happened within the Gurdwara, the committee members should understand about safeguarding. There should be identified safeguarding leads at every single Gurdwara. There should be a male lead and a female lead. Their details should be put up on the Gurdwara notice boards. If there is an issue, that person needs to be someone who's trained to understand safeguarding, trained to understand about how to make a proper referral, trained to understand how to support a victim. So I think the committees should not just be about talking about what's happening in terms of the counterpart or the strategic direction of the Gurdwara or extending the buildings. It's a public building that's funded by the Sangat, right? And I'm really sorry to say this, but I feel quite strongly about this. And the Gurdwara should be there to serve the community on more than just religion.
Absolutely.
There's lots of other issues that exist in our community.
Very true. That's what it is. These centers were formed not just for the religious services, but these were the hub centers where social, political, economic issues were discussed. And then if we see in the past, this is what happened, whether it is Canada or England, because everybody used to come over here from different communities and they used to discuss with each other and then find a solution. And that is what Gurbani also says, Ho ekattar milo mere pai, dubida dur karo levlai. If there is a problem, sit down and discuss and find solution for that. But that is not happening, which is really unfortunate. But the other question that arises is that while women are coming forward, they are empowered now, they are coming on all the fields. Is some effort being made towards this aspect also, that in the Gurdwaras, these kind of issues should be talked about, or there's just a mum on this?
No, it's a complete silence from most Gurdwara. You'll find that it's complete silence. And because there's no proper safeguarding policies, when a victim reports to a Gurdwara committee to say that actually this has happened whilst I've been at the Gurdwara, or this has happened to me or to my child, the Gurdwara, if they want to take any action, the action that's taken is that that Granthi or that member of the committee is moved on to another Gurdwara. But then all that's happened is displacing the issue. It's not dealing with the issue.
Right.
So you need to actually deal with what the issue is, and you need to report that person. But what we see time and time again is that the person who's come forward seeking support is the person that then is targeted by the Gurdwara themselves and shamed, and they've tried to dishonor them. And this isn't just in one Gurdwara, this has happened in many Gurdwara, for speaking up. Or they've tried to talk to the victims or their families to say, look, this doesn't look good for the community. We need to stay quiet. I'm sorry, but that's the victim.
Right.
That victim is coming forward, and it takes an immense amount of strength for someone to seek that support in the first place. So I think these are conversations that we need to have in our community.
Right.
Because they've been brushed under the carpet for too long, and movements like ours are going to start the conversation. We've started a bit of a movement in the UK.
Right.
And I'm sure you've got many movements within Canada as well.
Absolutely.
So, we need to start having the conversations.
Very true. We'll go for a short break. We'll be back. And from here onwards, we'll talk about as to what kind of support you are asking from the community, and especially women organizations, how they can come forward, and when it comes to the Sikh temples, how to involve them also, and what other resources are available for those who suffer, and why they should come forward and talk about this. We'll talk all about this after the short break.
ਭਾਰਤ ਪੈਸੇ ਭੇਜਣੇ ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਮੰਗਵਾਣੇ ਹੋਣ ਤੇ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਫੋਰੈਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਤਸੱਲੀਬਖਸ਼ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰੇਟ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਗਾਰੰਟੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 6043491313 ਉੱਤੇ।
ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਵੇਂ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸਟੋਵ, ਓਵਨ, ਫ੍ਰਿਜ, ਵਾਸ਼ਰ ਡਰਾਇਰ, ਮਾਈਕ੍ਰੋਵੇਵ, ਫ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਸ ਜਾਂ ਡਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ਼ਰ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪਹੁੰਚੋ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਮ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਤੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ 3 ਬ੍ਰਾਂਚਸ ਸਰੀ, ਐਬਟਸਫੋਰਡ ਤੇ ਚਿਲਵੈਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਨ। ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਮਿਲਣਗੇ। ਇਹ ਡਿਲੀਵਰੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਸਟਾਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪੈਕੇजेस ਫॉर ਬਿਲਡਰਸ ਐਂਡ ਹੋਮ ਓਨਰਸ। ਕਾਲ 6045904140 604 590 4140।
ਕੁਦਰਤ ਦੇ ਸੌਮਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਆਯੁਰਵੇਦਾ ਰਾਹੀਂ 5000 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਬਣਾਏ ਗਏ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅਪਰੂਵਡ 100% ਸ਼ੁੱਧ ਆਯੁਰਵੈਦਿਕ ਡਾਇਟਰੀ ਸਪਲੀਮੈਂਟਸ ਦਾ ਲਾਭ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸਟ੍ਰੈਸ, ਐਂਗਜ਼ਾਇਟੀ, ਇਨਸੋਮਨੀਆ, ਬਲੱਡ ਸ਼ੂਗਰ, ਕਿਡਨੀ, ਬਲੈਡਰ, ਹਾਜ਼ਮਾ, ਆਈਸਾਈਟ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਆਰਗੈਨਿਕ ਇਲਾਜ, ਜੋੜਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਦਰਦਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਰੀਰਕ ਮਸਾਜ ਲਈ ਕਈ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੇ ਆਯੁਰਵੈਦਿਕ ਤੇਲ ਵੀ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹਨ। ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ 604 628 2003।
ਸ਼ਾਈਨ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਡੈਂਟਲ ਕਲੀਨਿਕ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਸਤਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਦੇਖਰੇਖ ਹੇਠ ਆਧੁਨਿਕ ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਦੰਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਹੀ ਕੇਅਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੰਦਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਫ਼ ਕਰਨਾ, ਕਰਾਊਨਸ, ਬ੍ਰਿਜਸ, ਡੈਂਟਲ ਇੰਪਲਾਂਟਸ, ਰੂਟ ਕਨਾਲ, ਡੈਂਚਰਸ, ਬੌਂਡਿੰਗ ਅਤੇ ਵਨੀਰਸ, ਐਕਸਟ੍ਰੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ, ਬੋਨ ਕ੍ਰੈਫਟਿੰਗ ਆਦਿ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹਨ। ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਡੈਂਟਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਮਾਹਰ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਘੱਟ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ ਚਾਰਜ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਫॉर ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਸ਼ਾਈਨ ਐਂਡ ਸਮਾਈਲ 604 503 0320 ਤੇ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ। ਕਿੰਗ ਜਾਰਜ ਸੁਪਰ ਸਟੋਰ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ, ਯੂਨਿਟ 370 7488 ਕਿੰਗ ਜਾਰਜ ਬੁਲੇਵਾਰਡ, ਸਰੀ। Once again, welcome back to the program. This program is being brought to you with the support of Day-to-Day Wholesale Cash and Carry. This is British Columbia's largest South Asian grocery store where you can buy groceries, party-wear, kitchenware and homeware. More than 5,000 products are displayed on the shelves, and for best prices, unique grocery buying experience and high-quality products, come to 7843 128th Street, Surrey. Phone number is 604-503-8787. Our next sponsor is AMC Insurance. If you're looking for home, auto, travel, business, life or recreational insurance, you can depend upon them. They have 9 branches in the lower mainland to serve you. They're open 7 days a week from 8:30 a.m. onwards till 9 p.m. For more information, call 604-507-6666. 604-507-6666. Let's get back our guests and continue with our discussion as to what needs to be done. This is an issue which no more can be brushed under the carpet, as was told to us before the break. So Minreet, the question that arises now is that there are many women organizations. In March we celebrated International Women's Day. Many seminars are held. Women empowerment talks are held. But is that message really percolating down at the base level, or it just remains confined to those who are already empowered? That's a very important aspect which you have in your social stories covered also. What would you like to say about that? What is the situation in England?
The situation in England is that, yes, it does filter down. I think, women have been very vocal in a lot of ways. And I think, like with domestic violence, for example, now things are changing and women do feel that they can reach out and also they can share their stories. So many more are willing to talk about it. I think, just in terms of lots of topics, I think, women definitely are coming together. They're much more stronger. They feel they have a voice. They can use their voice. Is it getting filtered down? I think I mean, I think it is. I think, slowly it definitely is getting filtered down. The younger generation are much more vocal. If we just look at the farmers' protests recently, it was more women that were talking about that and being more active on social media. I highlighted that in my stories and made sure that it was the women that I raised their voices for them by being able to highlight what they're saying. So I think it is. Women are definitely not afraid, I think, now as much as what they were before. But I just think there's that kind of barrier sometimes that they have to face, which is the men in the community that sometimes don't really let women speak up. And if you do, then, you're shunned, or someone will, make a comment about it. If I could just talk about this article in itself, me and Narinder haven't had a chance to catch up since it's been published. But even with this, I didn't really get a lot of people reaching out to me in the community, the men, or even people in the community. Actually, yeah, that's true. The men didn't really reach out to say, oh, well done, really good article. The kind of comments I got was, well, why have you highlighted it as a Sikh issue? It's not just a Sikh issue. And I understand it's not. But the thing is, it's very different the way things are in our community and the way that men are. That at the end of the day, I have friends that have, are divorced and have walked away from marriage because they've gone through domestic violence. And when you realize someone yourself, you personally know, and it's a big issue and the kind of violence that they're faced with, it is a Sikh issue. It's happening in our community. It's happening in everywhere. But in ours, we've got to highlight it because otherwise women won't walk away. So they're the kind of comments. I got really negative comments from men, and it was just men that were saying it's not just a Sikh issue, you shouldn't have put that. I mean, in fact, I had a really abusive message on Instagram saying to me that, you're the daughter of the skipping Sikh and you should be ashamed of yourself putting Sikh in the title. This is the kind of community that we live in.
Absolutely.
That these are the kind of comments I have to put up.
And this is where work needs to be done, because generally when we brush aside things and say it happens in all the communities, well, of course it happens in all the communities, but we are concerned about what is happening in our community and we need to rectify that. That should be our priority. Anyways, Narinder, when cases come to you, because you said, not only the Sikhs, but from other communities also, survivors come to you. So when you talk to them and analyze, is there any major difference behind the reasons for this domestic abuse between the Sikh community and other communities, or is it virtually the same?
It is virtually the same, but like I said, in our community, what we have found is that there are female perpetrators as well. We found that in our community as well, that because we are a well-to-do community, we get lots of things where the victims' debts are taken out in their name. They're prevented from, and because the family or the perpetrator might be able to financially support them, they want them to become financially dependent on them. So they will do things like, we've had people who are qualified pharmacists, and we've even had police women where they've been the perpetrators try to stop them working. So they've gone to university, they've got their degree, they've qualified in a profession, a highly regarded profession, and then once they get married, they're expected to give up their profession so that they can be at the beck and call of the perpetrators and their families. And when they don't, sometimes if they've either refused, then that's where the abuses began. But the other thing as well, which is quite sad, is that in our community, we have also uncovered still, even in a Western country like the UK, we still have feticide, so female feticide. We still have these issues. So when someone has a daughter, gives birth to a daughter, that then starts the cycle of abuse. And it's like, we need a son. Right. We're in the 21st century now. Those sorts of issues shouldn't make a difference, because the way that we are, and the way that when girls get married, it's no longer a case of you disconnect completely from your parents' family. You still are there as their daughter. So all this has changed, but some people's mentality in terms of we need to have a grandson or we need to have, a son, that still exists, and that's also still a huge problem in our community. So I think there's factors that we've uncovered, and also another thing that we didn't realize existed in our communities is unregistered marriages. So I knew that it existed in the Muslim community, and that's where it's highlighted quite often in public, but it also exists in our community. And we've uncovered that predominantly happens in families where they're Amritari families, where they have said that as long as we are blessed by Guru Granth Sahib and we've had Ashirwad from Guru Granth Sahib, we then don't need the registered marriage. But then when there's domestic abuse within that situation, that then leaves the victim at a disadvantage because officially they're not married.
Right.
And they're not entitled to anything.
So, Minreet, what do you think? When we talk about changing the mentality, what efforts need to be done? What other means need to be adopted so that that mentality, which is still existing, what Narinder talked about, can change?
I think we just need to talk about it a lot more. I think we need to just, within ourselves, be able to just use our voice, our social media, and just go ahead and talk about it and not feel limited to what we can talk about. Because I think it starts from ourselves. So, as we spoke about this before, Harpreet, about my divorce, I was the first one to share my story. And it's quite scary when you're that first person, but I don't really care what the community say. We're not here really, for the community to give us like that, pat on the back. We're here to make a difference. So I think if you can make a difference and your voice can make a difference, it needs to start from us. We need to do it ourselves. We need to continue using our voice. We need to be vocal. We need to speak to, people at the Gurdwara and maybe have talks there and try and get more women to come forward or, even men to come forward because there's some really good men in our community. And Harpreet, you're one of them. You're raising these topics. You're getting people to come on and talk about it. And, you're doing that. So what you're doing and if other people do this, I think there will be that thing where people will start thinking, okay, it's not because it isn't all the men. There's some brilliant men out there who are so supportive, but that's what I want to see more of. The supportive men that are there, they need to come out because then they can then set that standard to other people to say, this is actually what we should be doing. We should come together and there should be that equality and we should really talk about any topic that is affecting our community. We should not be afraid to speak up, especially if you're speaking the truth and you're highlighting something that really does need that attention and potentially could save lives.
That's very true again, and thanks for your compliments. Basically, absolutely, it is the duty of everyone to come forward and start speaking on these issues because if we don't speak, nothing will change. But along with that, families play a very important role in our society, in our circles. This is the time when, like you give your example, you took the courage to come forward, but you were supported by your families. But many times what happens is families as to what people will say, because that is what is paramount on us. And we think what people will say, and that we try to send the girl back or tell her to adjust. And this rather further situation deteriorates. So Narinder, these kind of cases also must be coming to you. So what are the resources that are available now that if anybody is facing any domestic abuse, they can come forward in England and take the support?
So we get an awful lot of cases when we've got young girls who've come from India. So they're brought here. Quite often they'll be isolated. They might not have any family circle as well. They might be threatened with deportation if they sought help. So the perpetrators might say, well, if you tell anyone, you'll get sent back to India. Or, if they've got children, they might threaten them to say, well, social services will come, they will take the children away, they'll go into care. And the victim won't know what support is available. And then they also have a barrier thinking, well, where will I live? How will I survive? How will I provide for our children? But here in the UK, there's support available for all of that. So if you are, whether you're an EU citizen or whether you're married to a British citizen or you're a British citizen yourself, if you are a victim of domestic violence, you can get priority housing. So you can go into temporary accommodation first. Then you can apply for council housing. You can get benefits. So you get financial support.
Right.
If there's immigration issues, we have contact with immigration lawyers. So there's something here called a DDV concession, so the destitution due to domestic violence. So we can apply for that. And with that, you can apply for permanent status on your own basis.
Right.
So you don't have to stay in an abusive relationship if you are a victim of domestic violence just because you haven't got permanent status here.
Right.
So if you've come here and you're married to a British citizen, you can apply for that status as well.
Okay. So is there any website where people can get all this information? Does Sikh Women Action Network has a website or something?
Yes, our website is swanempower.co.uk.
Okay, great.
So if you go on there, all the help is available.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it was a pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you very much for raising this issue, and thanks for doing what you are doing. And let's all join hands to put an end to this, because we as Sikhs have accomplished a lot. We are known all over the world for our philanthropy, but on this particular issue, we also, the domestic issues, what we face as a community, need to be addressed, and it is only possible if people like you start coming forward and start speaking on those. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਮਨਰੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਨਰਿੰਦਰ ਕੌਰ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਸੁਆਨ ਤੋਂ ਸਨ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ UK ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਮੇਜਰ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਵੈਲ, ਥਿੰਗਸ ਆਰ ਚੇਂਜਿੰਗ ਬਟ ਨਾਟ ਐਟ ਦ ਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੁੱਡ। ਸੋ ਇਟ ਇਜ਼ ਦ ਡਿਊਟੀ ਆਫ ਐਵਰੀਬਡੀ ਹੂ ਨੋਜ਼ ਔਰ has knowledge about anybody facing domestic abuse to come forward, take the support, because there are various resources which are available and these can be taken and help can be provided to the survivor. Once again, thank you very much to all of you for watching this program. If you also want to be a part of this program, you can contact me at 604-603-7555 or you can email me at harpreetsingshow@gmail.com. इथे लेना आ गया, फिर मुलाकात करेंगे. Have a safe evening, stay healthy and enjoy yourself.
ਘਰ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਿੱਜੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਸੁਨਹਿਰੀ ਪਲ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਜੀਵਨ ਬਤੀਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਦ ਕਿਸੇ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਜੇ ਹੋਏ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਨਵੇਂ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰੇਮਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ਿੰਗ ਤੱਕ, ਡ੍ਰੇਪਰੀ, ਪੇਂਟਿੰਗਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਡੈਕੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਅਸੈਸਰੀਜ਼ ਤੱਕ, ਤੁਸੀਂ SK ਹੋਮ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਹਕੀਕਤ 'ਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕਰੋ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਕੌਰ 6048259295।
ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਮੈਨ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ? ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਓਨਰ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦਾ ਉਦਾਹਰਨ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਰ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਖ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਸਰੀ ਦਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲੋੜ ਦੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੇ ਟਰੱਕਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗਾਈਡੈਂਸ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸਪੇਸ, ਮੋਡੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਫਿਊਲ ਐਫੀਸ਼ੀਐਂਸੀ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਟਰੱਕਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਟੌਰ।
ਵੈਨਕਾਸਾ ਟਾਈਲ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਸ਼ੋਰੂਮ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹਰ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਸਟੋਨ, ਮਾਰਬਲ, ਬੈਕਸਪਲੈਸ਼, ਮੋਜ਼ੇਕ ਆਦਿ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ, ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼, ਚਾਈਨੀਜ਼ ਪੋਰਸਲਨ ਜਾਂ ਸਿਰੈਮਿਕ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਜਾਂ ਮਾਰਬਲ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਮਾਲਕ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਇੰਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 1304 84 ਐਵਨਿਊ ਸਰੀ। ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 330 7363 604 330 7363।